What's happening?
Oh, we almost hit a deer, that's all.
Steve Martin has shared a few surprising details about planes, trains, and automobiles that most fans never noticed. Things about how certain scenes came together, what was happening off camera, and moments that didn't make it into the final version. Some of it changes how you look at the film completely. Join us as we go through what Steve Martin revealed about planes, trains, and automobiles. The 4-hour cut. When John Hughes first put together Planes, Trains, and Automobiles with editor Paul Hirsch, the movie was far bigger than anyone expected. The early cut ran close to 3 hours and 45 minutes. That's not just long for a comedy, it's massive. Watching it wasn't simple either. The film had to be shown on 24 reels, and even the team needed a break halfway through just to get through it all. At the same time, the studio was pushing hard. The movie had to be ready for a Thanksgiving 1987 release, which meant there was very little time to fix the problem. A nearly 4-hour film wasn't going to work in theaters, especially for a fast-moving comedy. Something had to change, and quickly. Right in the middle of this pressure, Hughes left for a vacation. Before leaving, he took a VHS copy of that long version with him. That decision turned out to matter years later. Some of the deleted material that fans saw decades after came from that very copy. Without it, much of that footage might have been lost. When Hughes returned, the real work began. His approach to editing was direct. Instead of slowly fine-tuning scenes, he focused on cutting anything that didn't move the story forward. He and Hirsch went through the reels step by step, removing large chunks. There wasn't much hesitation. If something felt unnecessary, it was gone. A lot of what got cut included extended character moments, improvised bits, and long comedic sequences. Both Steve Martin and John Candy were known for adding extra material during filming, and Hughes himself kept writing new scenes during production. All of that built up into hours of extra footage. While much of it was funny or interesting, it slowed the film down. Bringing the runtime down to 93 minutes completely changed how the movie feels. The pacing became tighter, the story moved faster, and the emotional moments landed better because they weren't buried under too many scenes. The final version feels focused and clear, which is a big reason it works so well. Still, there was a trade-off. Hours of performances from Martin and Candy were never seen in the original release. That means entire layers of their characters were left behind. Even today, fans are still curious about what else was filmed, and that's just the beginning of how much this movie changed behind the scenes. An unreal screenplay. One of the most surprising things about Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is how quickly the script came together. John Hughes didn't spend months planning it. He wrote fast, very fast. In one night alone, he completed around 60 pages in about 6 hours. That's a huge portion of a screenplay done in a single sitting. He didn't slow down after that. The full script, which ended up being about 145 pages long, was finished in roughly 3 days. That's unusual, especially for a comedy. Most comedy scripts are shorter and take more time to develop because timing and structure matter so much. Hughes worked differently. He trusted his instincts and kept moving forward without stopping to trim things early. There's also an interesting detail tied to the story itself. The film follows a 3-day journey, and the script was written in about the same amount of time. That overlap wasn't planned as a clever idea. It just happened because of how quickly Hughes worked. Even after the script was done, he didn't really stop writing. During filming, he kept adding new material. Cast and crew would often receive fresh pages in the morning, sometimes written the night before. That meant scenes were always changing. Dialogue could be different from one day to the next, and new ideas kept getting added. For the actors, this created a mix of excitement and confusion. On one hand, it gave them more to work with and kept things interesting. On the other hand, it made the process unpredictable. Steve Martin, who had experience writing scripts himself, noticed that the screenplay was longer than usual. He even asked Hughes where cuts might happen. Hughes didn't have an answer because, at that stage, he wasn't thinking about removing anything. This approach had a clear result. More writing meant more scenes, and more scenes meant more footage. Combined with improvisation from actors like John Candy, the amount of material quickly grew far beyond what a typical comedy would include. That's a big reason the first cut of the movie ended up being so long. Most comedy films aim for tight scripts that keep the story moving. Hughes took the opposite route. He allowed the script to expand freely and dealt with the consequences later during editing. That non-stop writing didn't just shape the script. It set up one of the biggest challenges the film would face next: the motel scene. The motel stop in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles was meant to be a short break in the story. John Hughes planned it as a simple, overnight stay at the Braidwood Inn. Instead, it turned into one of the longest and most complicated parts of the early cut. At one point, this single sequence stretched to around 25 minutes. A big reason for this was how the scene kept growing during filming. Hughes encouraged freedom on set, and both Steve Martin and John Candy added extra lines and reactions. On top of that, Hughes was still writing new material as production continued. The result was a scene packed with different ideas, side moments, and extended interactions. Some of the deleted material shows just how much was originally included. One part features a long argument over food. Candy's character, Del Griffith, orders a pizza loaded with vegetables and tries to pass it off as a salad, which frustrates Martin's character. This leads into a much longer back and forth between the two. Their argument doesn't end quickly either. It stretches into a full emotional clash before they finally calm down and settle in for the night. There were also more playful moments. Del performs an Elvis impression in the bathroom, adding a lighter tone before things turn tense again. These smaller bits gave more personality to the characters, but also added to the overall length. Another major part that was removed involves the pizza delivery boy. In the final film, a thief steals their money with no clear explanation. The deleted scenes reveal that the delivery boy comes back later to take revenge after being paid poorly. This adds a full setup and payoff that connects the earlier scene to the later robbery. Without it, the theatrical version feels more sudden and less detailed. From an editing point of view, the scene became too heavy. It slowed down the movie and pulled attention away from the main journey. Even though many parts were funny or meaningful, keeping all of them would have made the film feel uneven. Cutting it down helped the pacing. The story moves faster, and the focus stays on the central relationship. But something was lost in the process. The longer version had more layers, showing both humor and tension in greater detail. When the deleted footage was released in 2022, it gave a clearer picture of Hughes's original idea. He wasn't aiming for a quick stop. He was building a full chapter of the story. And this wasn't the only time something simple in the film turned into something much bigger behind the scenes. The Chrysler. One of the most memorable parts of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is the beat-up car that Steve Martin and John Candy end up driving. In the film, it's labeled as a Grand Detroit, but that name isn't real. The car was actually a Chrysler LeBaron Town and Country. The reason for the fake name comes down to one strict condition from Chrysler. The company agreed to let the filmmakers use the car, but only if none of their branding appeared on screen. They didn't want their name attached to what the script had planned, and looking at what happens to the car, that concern makes sense. Throughout the movie, the vehicle is treated pretty badly. It gets dented, burned, and pushed far beyond normal use. At one point, it's literally on fire while still being driven. On top of that, the design itself already stood out because of its wood-paneled look, which some people found unusual. Chrysler likely didn't want audiences laughing at the car and connecting that directly to their brand. To get around this, the filmmakers removed all Chrysler logos and replaced them with a made-up brand. That's how Grand Detroit came into the story. They also created a fictional rental company to match. It was a simple solution, but it didn't really hide the truth. The car was still easy to recognize, especially for viewers familiar with cars from that time. The funny part is that this attempt to stay unnoticed had the opposite effect. The car became one of the most talked about elements in the film. Its worn-out look and constant breakdowns made it stand out even more. Instead of blending into the background, it became part of what people remember most. In the story, the car does more than just move the characters from one place to another. It reflects the situation Neil and Del are stuck in. It breaks down, causes problems, and forces them to deal with each other. At the same time, it's where some of their shared experiences happen, which slowly builds their connection. Filming these scenes wasn't simple either. Multiple versions of the car were used for different stages of damage. Some had to be modified for specific shots, especially the fire scenes. Managing that safely while keeping the scenes believable required careful planning. Even with all the effort to hide its identity, the car ended up becoming a key part of the film's personality. And surprisingly, one of the film's most emotional moments didn't even happen during a planned scene. Steve Martin's unscripted moment. One of the most powerful moments in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles wasn't planned in the usual way. It came from a quiet decision by John Hughes to film Steve Martin when he didn't even know the camera was on him. Between takes, Martin would often step aside and prepare for the next scene. He wasn't performing for the audience at that point. He was focused, thinking through his lines and his character. Hughes noticed something in those moments. Martin's expression looked thoughtful and serious in a way that felt real, not acted. Instead of asking him to recreate that feeling, Hughes quietly had it filmed as it happened. At the time, there was no clear plan for using that footage. It was simply captured because Hughes believed it might be useful later. That decision became very important during editing. When Hughes and editor Paul Hirsch were shaping the ending, they needed a moment where Martin's character, Neil, understands something deeper about Del. The story needed a shift from frustration to empathy, and it had to feel honest. The footage taken between takes turned out to be the perfect fit. It showed a natural, reflective expression that matched the emotional change Hughes wanted. To make it work within the scene, the team used careful editing. They cropped the image tightly so viewers wouldn't notice that it wasn't filmed in the same setting as the surrounding shots. With that adjustment, the moment blended into the sequence as if it had always been part of it. This small piece of film carries a lot of weight. It marks the point where Neil stops focusing only on his own problems and starts seeing Del differently. Without this shift, the ending would feel less meaningful. The emotional impact depends on that quiet realization. Hughes often trusted real reactions over staged ones. Instead of asking actors to repeat something until it felt right, he looked for genuine moments that happened naturally. This approach helped create scenes that feel more grounded and believable. At the same time, filming someone without their knowledge raises questions. Actors usually expect to know when they are being recorded, especially in a professional setting. In this case, the result added something valuable to the film, but the method sits in a gray area between creative instinct and personal boundary. Even so, that brief, unplanned shot became one of the most meaningful parts of the entire story. And not every behind-the-scenes story was this quiet. Some were chaotic from start to finish. The production that lived the movie. The story of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is about travel going wrong. But during filming, the cast and crew were dealing with similar problems in real life. John Hughes had planned to shoot most of the movie in Chicago and nearby areas. The problem was simple. There wasn't enough snow. The winter that year was warmer than expected, and the scenes needed a cold, snowy setting to match the story. Because of this, the production had to move. The team started traveling across New York State, searching for places with reliable snow. Locations like Batavia, New York, and South Dayton, New York, became key filming spots. Even then, the weather didn't always cooperate. Snow would appear when it wasn't needed and disappear when it was. To deal with this, the crew sometimes used artificial snow. Special teams were brought in to create the look required for certain scenes. But that came with its own problems. Real snow could fall unexpectedly and change the scene completely, forcing delays. Cameras had to stop, setups had to be reset, and schedules had to shift again. All of this meant constant travel. Equipment, cast, and crew were moving from place to place, trying to stay on track. Flights, drives, and last-minute changes became part of everyday work. It started to feel very similar to the journey in the film, where nothing goes as planned. These conditions caused many delays. Scenes had to be pushed back, and some plans had to be changed entirely. Long shooting days became normal. Cast and crew often worked 12 to 16 hours in cold weather, sometimes in temperatures close to freezing. It wasn't easy to stay focused and comfortable under those conditions. Steve Martin later talked about this experience and said they were living the plot. What he meant was that the same kind of travel problems and stress shown in the movie were happening behind the scenes too. The difference was that this wasn't scripted, it was real. This situation had an effect on the performances. The frustration, tiredness, and urgency felt by the characters were easier to express because the actors were dealing with similar feelings. It added a layer of honesty to their reactions. At the same time, it also tested everyone's patience and energy. In the end, the difficult conditions helped shape the tone of the film. The sense of chaos and unpredictability didn't just come from the script, it came from the way the movie was made. And even with all this trouble, one unexpected problem came from something much quieter: music rights. The lost song. At one point, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles almost had a theme song created by Elton John. It wasn't just an idea either. The process had already started. Elton John teamed up with his regular writing partner, Gary Osborne, and the two began working on a song specifically for the film. They approached it seriously. Osborne later shared that they watched the movie first so they could understand its tone and emotional moments. After that, he wrote the lyrics, and Elton began composing the music. By the time things stopped, the song was close to being finished. Recording was the next step, and that was already scheduled. But just days before the recording session, everything fell apart. The problem wasn't creative, it was legal. At the time, Elton John's music rights were split between different companies depending on location. In the United States, he was connected to MCA Records. Outside the U.S., his music was tied to Polygram. This created a conflict when it came to ownership. Paramount Pictures, which was releasing the movie, wanted full ownership of the master recording of the song. That meant controlling how it would be used and distributed. However, because of Elton John's existing contracts, he couldn't simply agree to those terms. Polygram still had rights to his work, and that made the situation complicated. There wasn't enough time to fix the issue. The film had a set release date, and the schedule didn't allow for long negotiations. With no clear solution in place, the project had to be dropped. Elton John stepped away, and the song was never recorded. What makes this situation interesting is that the song didn't just get replaced, it disappeared completely. There's no official version, no demo released, and no public recording. It remains one of those rare cases where a major artist nearly contributed to a film, but nothing ever came out of it. There has been a lot of curiosity about what the song might have sounded like. Based on the film's tone, it likely would have balanced humor with a more emotional touch, especially considering the story's ending. It might have played during the closing scenes or over the credits, adding another layer to the final moments. Over the years, even well-known figures have shown interest in this lost piece of music. Ryan Reynolds has mentioned wondering about it, which shows how much curiosity still surrounds the idea. It's a small part of the film's history, but it leaves behind a big question that still hasn't been answered. And the music troubles didn't stop there. Another key song faced a very different kind of problem: the song that wasn't meant to be. The ending of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles almost sounded very different. John Hughes had a clear idea for the final scene, and it included a specific song, "Every Time You Go Away" by Paul Young. The track had already been a big hit, and Hughes believed it would match the emotional tone of the film's closing moments. He didn't just assume it would work, he reached out to get permission. Paul Young himself liked the idea and agreed to let the song be used. From a creative point of view, everything was set. The director had the song he wanted, and the artist was on board. But there was one problem that changed everything. The final decision didn't belong to the artist. It belonged to the record label that controlled the rights to the recording. Even though Young approved, the label refused to grant permission. No detailed reason was given, but this kind of situation isn't unusual. Music rights often come with strict rules, and artists don't always have full control over how their songs are used. This created a frustrating situation. Hughes had built part of the ending around a specific feeling, and now he couldn't use the song that inspired it. There wasn't much time to argue or find a workaround either. The film was close to release and a replacement had to be found quickly. The solution was to create a new version of the song. Hughes brought in a group called Blue Room to record a cover of Every Time You Go Away just for the film. This allowed the production to keep the song itself, but without using the original recording. Even though the lyrics and melody stayed the same, the overall effect changed. Paul Young's version had a familiar sound and emotional weight that came from being a well-known hit. The Blue Room cover worked, but it didn't carry that same recognition. For some viewers, the ending feels slightly different because of that. The emotion is still there, but the impact isn't exactly what Hughes first imagined. This situation shows how much control music licensing can have over a film. A single decision by a record label can change how a scene feels, even when the creative team and the artist agree on what they want. In this case, the ending still works, but it's shaped by a compromise. What audiences hear in the final scene isn't the original plan. It's the result of a last-minute adjustment. And while the music caused problems behind the scenes, one short scene in the film caused an even bigger reaction for a completely different reason. The R rating. One short scene in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles had a huge impact on how the film was rated. It happens at the rental car counter when Steve Martin's character finally loses his patience. After a long series of travel problems, he returns to the airport expecting to get his rental car, only to find out it isn't there. What follows is a fast, intense outburst directed at the employee behind the desk. In that moment, Martin delivers a rapid string of complaints filled with frustration. The scene stands out because of its language. The same swear word is used 18 times in about 60 seconds. It's not random or messy, though. The lines were written carefully by John Hughes. Martin later explained that the wording had a specific rhythm, and changing it or adding extra lines would have ruined the timing. Many people assume the scene was improvised because it feels so natural, but it wasn't. Hughes wrote it with clear structure, building the tension step by step. Martin followed that structure closely, which is why the scene flows so smoothly despite the repeated language. When the film was submitted for rating, this scene caused a problem. The rating board focused on the repeated use of strong language and decided it was too much for a lower rating. Hughes tried to appeal the decision, but it didn't work. Even though the movie didn't include violence or sexual content, the language alone was enough to give it an R rating. This created an unusual situation. Most films receive higher ratings because of physical action or mature themes. In this case, it all came down to one short exchange at a counter. The rest of the film is fairly mild in comparison, which makes this decision stand out even more. Despite that, the scene works because it mixes anger with humor. The situation is frustrating, but the way Martin expresses it makes people laugh. His tone, timing, and facial expressions turn a tense moment into something entertaining. It's one of the most remembered parts of the film for that reason. It also played a role in bringing Martin into the project. When he read the script, this was one of the scenes that stood out to him. He saw the potential in how it was written and understood how effective it could be on screen. In the end, a single minute of dialogue shaped how audiences could watch the entire movie. And surprisingly, one small role in the film led to a real-life reward no one expected. A simple role. Not every part of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles was meant to be big or memorable. Some roles were very small on paper, including a minor truck driver character who was only supposed to appear for a single day of filming. This was a background-style role with just a short appearance in the story. But the production didn't go as planned. Because of weather problems and constant location changes, filming took much longer than expected. Snow conditions kept shifting, schedules kept moving, and scenes were delayed again and again. This affected even the smallest roles. Instead of filming for one day, the truck driver actor was kept on standby for a much longer period. In film production, being on standby means the actor is still under contract and available, even if they are not actively filming. The key detail is that they are still paid during that time. So while the crew waited for weather or location changes, the actor continued receiving payment. Over time, those extra days added up. What was supposed to be a short job turned into a longer paid period than anyone expected. By the time production finally wrapped, the total earnings from this small role had become significant enough to make a real difference in the actor's life. The actor most often linked to this role is Troy Evans, who appeared as a truck driver in the film. While the role itself was small and uncredited in some records, the extended schedule reportedly gave him more paid days than originally planned. This situation highlights something common in film production. Delays cost money, but they also continue paying people who are already under contract. When filming stretches out, even minor roles can benefit financially without doing extra on-screen work. In this case, the extra income was enough to help with a major personal milestone. Reports suggest it contributed to a house down payment, turning a short acting job into something far more valuable than expected. It also shows how unpredictable film work can be. A role that looks like a one-day appearance can change completely depending on weather, logistics, and scheduling issues. For some people, those changes are stressful. For others, they create unexpected financial stability. Even though this wasn't planned, it became one of those rare behind-the-scenes outcomes where production problems ended up helping someone in a real and lasting way. If you found this interesting, like the video, subscribe for more, and drop a comment on what movie you want broken down next.